He says to her, the most dangerous dragon lies within.
But anything that blocks you from your potential to grow is a dragon. It could be fear, addiction, the need for approval, self-pity, and laziness. The God in me is the God that got you up here too. I have to accept that. Diversity without community, without unity, forces ignorance, competition, fear, potentially violence. And ultimately, diversity born of a new unity is the redemption of the planet.
You're listening to Wise Women with Daisy Khan, where faith rolls up its sleeves as a force for good, and where women define the future with wisdom and wonder. I'm Daisy Khan. Kindly subscribe wherever you get your podcast. Welcome back, friends. So today we'll explore the modern-day fairy tale of a princess who confronts darkness not through force, but through the power of her female intuition. Today, my guest, Robert De Sena, he is the author of Chrysallia, the Princess of Possibility. He's an educator, speaker, and a fellow spiritual seeker. And Robert weaves all these stories of mythology with the challenges of the modern times. So, Robert, your message is more relevant today than ever, and I'm absolutely delighted to have you.
And I'm delighted to be here.
So I want to ask you, what inspired you to write Chrysallia, the Princess of Possibility?
The prequel to Chrysallia, the Princess of Possibility, was rooted in another fairy tale that I wrote called The Dragon Slayer. And The Dragon Slayer basically was a story about a marginal young man living in a kingdom governed by a monarch. He's amassed a lot of gold that he wants to give to the people. And in that moment, a dragon comes and devastates the land, takes his daughter and all the gold. And the villagers are afraid because if they see this beast, they're going to become petrified. So because they won't face the dragon, they're freezing and starving. And the king sends out pigeons as messengers for someone to come and defeat the dragon and save the kingdom. This young man does it. He kills the dragon. He gets the princess as a reward. And the women in my network said, I don't want to teach this. I said, why? They said, because we don't want to send a message out to the young women in Council for Unity that all they have to do is be a princess to become a prize for some man. And I was like, oh my God, they're right. That was the terminology for Chrysallia.
I didn't realize you were trying to do this to empower women, to show that women are co-stewards of humanity. And so I wanted to ask you the significance of her name. Is it symbolize something unique?
It does, yes. The basic inspiration was the chrysalis. Here is a larva with a potential and is going to emerge out of that cocoon to become a monarch. There is a 15-year-old girl whose mother just died and whose father was paralyzed at a point when all of these immigrants who are seeking this promised land, and the one thing they can't do is tolerate each other, so they're disrupting everything. And she is thrown into a full-blown crisis to address this. And like the larva that comes out of the cocoon and becomes a monarch, Chrysallia has to go through a rite of passage to deal with all of the things that are blocking her spiritual potential and getting rid of the appetites that prevent her from a new spiritual inner reality. That's the basic implication of the name Chrysallia.
How does this idea of mythology and archetype and hero's journey influence the creation of Chrysallia?
In a very profound way. I grew up Catholic at a time when the church created a lot of internal problems for me. I was taught in catechism that I went into a mosque or a temple or a Protestant church, I was committing a mortal sin, which could have condemned me to hell.
Even a Protestant church?
Even a Protestant church.
Wow.
And the other thing that I was taught was that the Jews killed Christ and that their persecution worldwide came from a statement in the Testaments when Pontius Pilate offered the option of Barabbas in place of Jesus, And the response was, his blood be upon us and upon our people. Whoever got a hold of that quote used it as a justification for anti-Semitism. I grew up with that. And when I got to graduate school and started majoring in literature, I saw all these references to mythology, which I was not that familiar with. I convinced myself that if I was going to dive deep into the themes of literature, the universal themes, I would have to discover this new medium, mythology. And the more I read, the more I was captured. I began to realize that there was this spiritual energy inside of us that was transmitting to all peoples the common inheritance of a spiritual potential where we all ask the same questions. And without realizing it, we were all getting the same answers, but we were forbidden to discover how the other religious discipline got to those answers. So we were living in a parochial system of division. The more I experienced this, the more the cataracts were removed, and the more I began to see a much deeper schooled human potential. It's no accident that I ended up creating Council for Unity. What we're doing on an educational and community level, you're doing with the faith-based community.
I have to tell you something, Bob. When I went to Jericho High, my favorite...
Oh, you went to Jericho?
I went to Jericho High, and I was the first Muslim there. And the class that I aced in, guess which class it was? Mythology.
Oh my God, there's no accidents in life.
My teacher was Mr. Vigilante, and he said, do you know that you're a spiritualist? Because I was like a natural spiritualist. I gravitated towards that course. And I knew nothing about Western mythology because I hadn't studied it. But
well, the great thing about Campbell, he wrote this 4-volume work called The Masks of God. And it was primitive mythology, Oriental mythology, Occidental mythology, and creative mythology. And his message was that we create masks of our deities. And in the process of humanizing them and making them anthropomorphic, we're actually blocking ourselves from a true mystical experience. It's getting beyond the mask to realize all you have to do in the middle of a summer night is to walk outside and look up. And there is no vocabulary that define what you're looking at. It's the mystery of the universe.
So the Muslim mystics define it as a veil between you and God, the layers and layers of veils that we have in front of our eyes that we can't see things clearly. Chrysallia confronts these powerful rulers who are responsible for spreading darkness throughout the kingdom. And how does she face these forces when she's so young?
One part of its DNA, she inherited incredible powers from her mother and father. And she is the source of the feminine mystique in the sense that her enables her to penetrate the thoughts of evil men. And she knows what they're thinking before they even act. But she's untutored. She is not privy to her spiritual potential. And the one thing that Joseph Campbell gave us that was universal was the hero's journey. And he took all of the great hero stories of all the mythologies in the world, and he broke them down into 3 parts. The hero's journey constitutes a separation. The hero or heroine is leaving a world that he and she knows, is crossing a threshold into a physical world that hasn't been experienced yet. And in the process of the challenges is discovering an inner potential that could not happen if she or he remained in the comfort zone. And then the final component to that is the return, where after you go through this journey, you come back and tell the story, which is basically a motivation for others to say, I need to do the same thing.
So in spiritual terms, we call this getting detachment from that comfort zone that you have, and then coming into your own because of the detachment, because you realize who you really are.
The initiation that she goes through is absolutely mandatory. She has to overcome 3 obstacles before she reaches spiritual enlightenment. Jesus had 3 temptations, had to go into the desert for 40 days and fast, and he was tempted by the devil. Buddha had to go into the forest under the tree and was tempted by the daughters of Mara. And Muhammad had to go into a cave where the cave is a symbol of his own unconscious. It's a spiritual base. And of course, he gets the revelation. So Chrysallia is part of that. And she had to overcome lust to stay in her comfort zone because it's easy. She had to overcome her age. Once she accomplishes these three tests, she's now ready to confront a world dominated by men for 2,000 years, where these men solve their problems through violence, who live codes of intolerance, who demean women, and who defile the earth and
So
thrive on.
nothing seems to have changed, Bob.
That's why I wrote Chrysallia. And you want to know something? You're part of that. Powerful women need to come with powerful women qualities and have a cosmic shift. When you think of the symbols that characterize the modern era through men, you've got Darth Vader calling everybody to come over to the dark side, where you're in a materialistic, intolerant, cruel world where power is the thing that is imposed upon people to submit. And that's the world we're facing.
We are witnessing it more clearly than ever before.
And Joseph Campbell said the one thing when he created mythology, he said, the modern hero or heroine is different from the ancient hero. He said, the greatest thing the modern hero does is be himself. The temptation to go over to an impersonal system, promising you material benefits. Are you going to hold true to your own spiritual uniqueness, or are you going to go over and become what they want you to be? In Star Wars, when Darth Vader said to his son, come over to the dark side, that was an invitation to all of us to go and join this materialistic, alienating world. And if we make that decision, we're lost. So Chrysallia won't make it, neither would Luke Skywalker.
So Chrysallia's father teaches her a very important lesson. He says to her, the most dangerous dragon lies within. And when I heard that, I thought of this Quranic verse that says, a condition of a people does not change until they change what is in themselves, the dragon that lies within you. In your opinion, what does that actually mean?
There's so many layers to that. In the Dragon Slayer, the easiest answer is that the dragon represents fear. But anything that blocks you from your potential to grow is a dragon. It could be fear, addiction, the need for approval, self-pity, and laziness, all the things that can lead you to indulge your inner weaknesses and basically say to yourself, oh, I couldn't do that. I'm afraid. I don't want to make a mistake. Everybody's going to laugh at me. All of these things are dragons within you that prevent you from going forward. And you know what Campbell said, and I agree, he said, the ultimate dragon is your own ego.
Oh, yeah. In all spiritual traditions, you have to demolish the ego before you can move forward.
The ego, when you think about what constitutes self in religion, it's making yourself your own God. You practice lust and greed and all the other material things that are part of acquisition. The idea that you must break through that ego and love the other more than yourself as a part of your redemption and as a part of the redemption of the planet. Because if we don't do that, we're lost individually, and the planet is lost also because we become a population of self-absorbed people. So the ego is your dragon, but you have to face it.
This is so amazing. But there's also a prism-colored flower in the book. What does it represent, and how does it create a vision where we move beyond conflict?
It's all the colors of the prism united by a single stem. Otherwise, the Almighty creating us in diverse ways with the charge for us to recognize that that flower is united by a single stem, that we as spiritual people recognize that we were created in a diverse way and accept that's part of a divine plan. And if we don't do it, we got the world we have now, this world of intolerance and religious persecution. And that's where I got the idea. That flower is all powerful. And she uses that as a force to transform these men and bring them to a spirituality.
That's so beautiful, because I never really understood, Bob. Some of us who are spiritualists always understand that the divine plan is evident in front of us because God created us in different shades and in different nations. And there's even a verse of the Quran that says that God created you into nations and tribes so you may get to know one another. The purpose is so we could be curious about why these people look different. Who are they? What are they? Rather than thinking that we are superior and the other person is inferior because of the shade of the color of our skin. But to me, it's interesting why people can't wrap their head around the divine plan. Why is it so hard for people to acknowledge that? when it
I
is so
think
clear.
because the darker sides of all of our religions need to insulate us from discovering the similar truths. The epiphany occurs when you see 6 kings are told that they are going to inherit an incredible power when they get to the top of the mountain, and they're going to use their own holy books to get there with the assumption that's the only path. The epiphany occurs when they get up there and see all of their opposites. How the hell did you get up here? And the answer becomes, well, wait a second. If no path is blessed and no path is cursed, and we all got here, then there is a new spiritual reality that I have to accept, that your journey and your belief system got you to the top of the mountain. The epiphany is the spiritual moment saying, the God in me is the God that got you up here too. I have to accept that. That's the spiritual moment. And that is the turning point in Chrysallia.
And unfortunately, some people are going to discover that spiritual truth only in the afterlife, when they are like, wait, you're here too? I thought you weren't supposed to be here in heaven. I thought you were supposed to be over there for the afterlife to see that.
I got news for the world. We're all chosen. We've all been inflected with the capacity to discover that inner power within us and within the universe. We just have to acknowledge it.
So going back to another symbol of the black and the white leopard as her totem, what is that?
You could look at this in multiple ways. You can look at that Asian symbol of yin and yang, but in Chrysallia's context, she is at a point before her journey where she is dominated by very dark appetites. And because of that, she is incapable of discovering her spiritual potential. And the purpose of this leopard, who in the long run is her mother, at the end of the story, when she saves the world and she's lost and she never had an opportunity to grieve her mother, and now she's all alone, she saved the world, and yet she still is unfulfilled, and she starts crying almost at the top of this mountain, mother, and all of a sudden out of the bushes, the leopard comes and looks at her and says, yes, that was her mother. The purpose of her totem was to lead her through a rite of passage to come to the light of her spiritual potential. So she's a balance in a sense. The tree was another great symbol that represents the black and white. It's a major symbol in myth, and it's a symbol of our own duality. You've got the branches that move towards the sun and are craving for enlightenment, but then you have the roots, which are buried in a mystical earth that we can't see where all the magic is. And we're both.
They're rooted in the same ground, the same earth.
When you think of diversity, it sounds like a beautiful thing, but diversity without community, without unity, forces ignorance, competition, fear, potentially violence. And ultimately, diversity born of a new unity is the redemption of the planet. We haven't done it, and look at the mess we're in. If you look at who's running this planet right now, they're in that book. The 6 kings, what we're inheriting is millennia of men like them, basically befouling the earth, the meaning of women.
And each of these people think that they're godlike, and that's exactly what the Quran teaches us, describing the Pharaoh as being the tyrant leader who thought he was godlike. And look at what he did to his people, led them to destruction.
And all who followed him. We've witnessed this throughout history. At the end of the book, the men realized that to change the dynamic, they were going to all agree to put women in very powerful places and submit to them as counselors. Because look at the problem men face when you talk about this duality. I grew up in a very violent world, gangs. I was reclaimed, and that's a story that for another time. But the one thing that was clear is that to be a man, you could not show vulnerability, emotion, compassion, all the things that are associated with women
The female.
were things you had to deny in yourself. And look at the sickness that comes from a man who can't express his feelings. The strong silent type means you suffer in silence and don't share your pain. That's psychosis. And so the need for the disduality, which Chrysallia is basically confronting men with, is that if you don't find your feminine side, you're lost.
Some of the best men are people who have a strong feminine side to them, because they wind up empowering women from my own father, who came to me, gave me a pair of boxing gloves, said, "Go fight."
I love him.
And
That's a great man.
because he had 3 daughters, and he was like, "Okay, this is it. I got 3 daughters."
If I had 3 daughters, I wouldn't have any hair. Happens with age.
So we're going to conclude now. So I just want to tell my audiences that you could see, dear friends, that stories are not just entertainment. They actually shape how we see ourselves and the world around us. And Bob, thank you so much for writing a beautiful book showing what true leadership is, whether it's female or what men should adopt in healing this divided world. Thank you so much, Bob. I encourage you all to pick up the book, Chrysallia. It is available on Amazon. It's a beautiful read. Bob, thank you so much for joining me, and thank you everyone for listening.
My pleasure. Thank you, Daisy. It was an honor.
Thank you for joining me on Wise Women. If something stirred in you today, don't let it stop here. Share this episode with someone who needs it. Reflect on what resonated for you, and definitely plant one seed of change, however small. Remember, you do matter, and your actions have a ripple effect. But none of us can rise alone. To explore more resources and ways to get involved, do visit my website, daisycon.com. And don't forget to subscribe, rate, and leave a review, because every click is your way of amplifying this message to others. Wisdom isn't just heard, my friends, it's lived. So let's live it. Until next time, stay wise and stay rooted.